Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear FasCat.
What? Hold on. That's right. Yeah, that's right, everyone. FastCat is officially 20 years old this month, and this is a special two-part podcast. We're taking a long look back at the pivotal moments that form the FastCat community from the beginning.
From pioneering work on training with power to discovering that Subway's microwaves can screw up your indoor training classes, there are all sorts of good stories to be told.
So many stories, in fact, that we're making this a special two-part podcast. And today we'll be taking you from the beginning in 2003 to 2013, actually a little bit to into 2015, the rise and the fall of the FastCat Performance Center. And next week, we'll continue pick up from where we left off, 2015 to present day, 2023.
Yeah, that's kind of a good split because 2013, if I'm remembering correctly, was the year a certain brand called Wahoo launched a certain product called the Kicker Smart
Yeah.
Trainer,
Yeah.
and then 2014, a little thing called Zwift rolled around. So a couple pivotal moments
Hmm.
in the world of bicycle training, and
Yeah.
a common theme throughout, whether we're talking kickers or Zwift or stages or SRM or power tap, the old power trap as we call it, is like how you, Frank, and the team at FastCat have constantly been innovating and responding and creating solutions for riders as the world changed. Whether that's power meters coming out or smart trainers launching or when COVID turned the world upside down. But
Yeah.
before we get into all that, let's catch up on what's happening right now, and we can hit our review of the week and some announcements. Let me kick it off with the review of the week from Robert Post, who posted in our private Facebook group. Robert had this to say: I trained with FastCat 16 weeks sweet spot and finished about 4 weeks ago. My plan was to roll right into the 6-week road racing plan, but a couple of minor injuries, weather, and a little travel made that impossible. So cycling has been sporadic. Regardless, that sweet spot training was so effective that last night I achieved my primary goal of riding with the big dogs on my local group ride, which averages about 21 to 23 miles an hour over 40 miles of rolling Pennsylvania roads. Not only did I hang, but I did not suffer too much, and two of us rode away from the group for the last couple of miles.
Nice.
And on top of that, I placed fifth, first in the field, at a local training crit 2 weeks ago. This is a huge jump in performance for me, so big thank you to the coaches.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, way to go, Robert. Continuing on, Elliot Baring is going to be leading our BWR Canada and North Carolina shakeout rides. And if the planets aligned, I may make my way over to Asheville. It's my old stomping grounds. That's where it all started back in Hobby Park, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Nice. Yeah, I hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so. That's a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, yeah. Also, love to give a shout out to Marissa Boaz, FastCat sponsored athlete. She's coached by Coach Isaiah, and she won the Hogback Gravel in
Yeah,
Iowa.
yeah.
Yeah, I know that's a stepping stone. She's racing the Unbound 200 this year, and she is a former podcast guest. After was it last year when she won
Yeah,
the?
she won the 100 at
Yeah,
Unbound last year. Yeah.
yeah, she's ready to step it up. So we're rooting for her.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, mother of four and all around crusher. Be looking forward to seeing her out there in Emporia here.
yeah,
This coming up weekend, we've got a Fast Cat athlete ride here in Boulder. Looking forward to that. Frank and I have been eyeing the weather. Frank's got food on order. Should be a good day. Getting a
yes.
few hours out there together on the bike with some athletes and some coaches. So that will be a good time. And
Hmm.
then looking a little further down the calendar, we've got a whole plethora of big gravel races. Wild Horse Gravel, which is a partner with FastCat. I'm looking forward to doing that one on the western slope of Colorado. Rule of Three is the rowdy mountain bikey one out in Bentonville. And then Gravel Locos down in Texas. Dutch Mafia, etc. Some big hitters will be down there. So good
Hmm.
luck to all of you FastCats
Yeah,
racing in those.
I have a couple athletes doing gravel locos. They're pretty stoked, and they're using it as a stepping stone for Unbound as well. It's like the timing is perfect because it's you race
It's
and you
2 weeks
go,
out.
yeah, you go deep, you go home, you recover, you sharpen the sword, you begin your taper, and then what? Bam, unbound.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember Kristen Ligon at, because Wild Horse Travel the same weekend, 2 weeks out, racing Wild Horse, winning Wild Horse, I may add,
Yeah.
and then scheming on how she could ride back home from the
Well,
Western Slope to like really double down on those miles. She didn't ride the entire way, but like got to ride part way back
mm.
and then jumped out and just casually pedaled 100 miles, whatever, back in day two.
That's the next level.
Yeah, it's a big mile. So I was just talking to somebody about Keegan Swinson getting ready for
Oh yeah.
his Unbound Gravel 200s, doing a 3-day block.
Hmm.
Day one, 7 hours. Day two, 8 hours. Day three, 170 miles, 9 hours.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's an awful lot.
I think Keegan wins the social media intimidation award. The way that he can just do things and get in the heads of his competitors. I mean, if you
Yeah,
were doing Unbound and racing against him and saw that training block, you would be like, "Oh crap!"
yeah. Oh yeah, it's like the whole thing. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Those are like social media punches to the face. Like he's doing what? And it's not like he's talking about these things idly. Like he'll just put the proof up. Like
Yeah,
here's the Training Peaks file.
yeah,
Here's the Garmin file
yeah,
at the end of the day.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Catch me if you can. Yeah,
yeah, it's going to
hmm
be a good one. I'm excited to watch the end of that one.
for sure. Yeah, he's probably maybe secret training his sprint. We'll see. Yeah, maybe 1 minute power. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
yeah, yeah. I guess Ivar Slick won last year. Was like, yeah, those travel files are all fine and good, but
Hmm.
got to finish it off.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that I'll be rooting for him. That's awesome.
Let's go. Let's go in the Wayback Machine, Frank.
Sure.
Now the way back in the black and white days, the dawn of time. So, sort of like 20 years. I was just doing the math here with my fingers and my toes. I'm like, well, how do we count 20 years? Because
Hmm.
the FasCat idea began what 2002,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. That's
But then
right.
2003 is when you put your stake in the ground with a website, fastcatcoaching.com, courtesy
Yeah.
Dreamweaver and GoDaddy.
Go
but
daddy. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so let's start from the very start. Why
Yeah.
how did FastCat coaching come to be? What was the idea? Where did this come
Hmm.
from? Because it's always like, for me as an ignorant consumer, when I see long-standing companies, I just sort of assume, well, yeah, they've always been there, and or that was always the plan. Like
Hmm.
It was always a plan for Coca-Cola to be like this intergalactic global company. Like, no, it had to start somewhere, and it didn't start enormous. And like, what was the idea
Yeah.
for FastCat?
Well, the idea, I tell you, was to train and race full time and not have to have a job. And I schemed if I could coach 10 athletes at $100 a month, that'd be $1,000. And I could keep surfing the couch of this friend whom I was rooming up with. And the backstory of that was, I when I came up in 1998, I was like, maybe I'll give this bike racing a go. And I always had a full time job. I was never the type of athlete that had this block of time, a couple of years to really dedicate themselves. And along the way, I bought a SRM, a late 1999, 2000, and I knew that if I was going to compete against the guys that I was competing against who were training and racing full time while I had like a real job working for the man, I would need to train smarter. I would have to outsmart them using sports science. So I was like, oh, I get this SRM and I'll figure out power based training and I'll train really smart and that's how I'll do it. And that's kind of what I did. However, we had the .com bubble burst, and then 9/11, and then the biotech company that I worked with for that was my employer. They did a round of layoffs, and that was January 3rd, 2020. 2002, 2002, not even 20,
Yeah.
2002. And
Happy New Year.
thank you. Right. And I was like, can you do that before Christmas? Because then I would have just taken a longer vacation or something like that. Yeah, you come back, you're raring to go for the whole year. And it's like, wah, wah, here's the door. So, they gave me a decent severance. And so, like immediately I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to train. I'm going to race full time. I started doing 5 hour rides, 6 hour rides. That was actually when I was doing polarized training, working with a coach who was having me do a lot of zone two. And, if you go back and you listen to the story of sweet spot training, that got me so far. It didn't go take me all the way. That's where sweet spot training was invented because everyone's like, oh, all the pundits that argue sweet spot versus zone two. It's like, well, I've done the 25-hour weeks riding around in zone two, and I didn't make me as fast as I could be. But I did that year, and that was a good learning experience. 5 hour rides day after day after day in zone two with a power meter. And if you really want to go back in the Wayback Machine, I bought an MP4, MP3 player that was as big as a brick, and it barely fit in my pocket. And that was back in like the Napster days. Remember Napster? And man,
The mini disc player, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, it was called a Rio Riot. That was the brand. And
Okay.
this is pre iPod, pre everything. And yeah, I would, download music from Napster. I was like, what music would be good for a 6 hour ride? Well, let's try trance or some electronica. And, you download that. And I would just go out and ride in zone two. Life was good. Come home, surf that couch. And I knew my severance was going to run up. So it was like, oh, wow, I need to come up with this idea to train and race full time. And, I was really interested in coaching, power based training. There were some other coaches out there. There weren't many though. And so, I hatched the idea, but I didn't know what I was doing. That's really just kind of waffled the whole year. All of 2002 is like, okay, how do I become a coach? How do I become a coach? And finally, late 2002, I paid a friend $500 and a 6 pack of beer to build the FasCatCoaching.com website using Dreamweaver. And we built it one evening. He actually lived up in Netherlands. And, that was it. And, of course, we built the website and nothing happened. Click. No one, no one contacted me. My phone didn't ring. And I was like, oh, darn it. What do I do? So I reached out to Pez Cycling News, and they there were, back then there was Velo News, there was bike.com, cycling news, and there was, this little small website called Pez Cycling News, and they had a training column. And I reached out to the publisher, and lo and behold, he said, yeah, send me your training tip. And so I wrote a training tip, the right way and the wrong way to perform intervals using your SRM power meter. And the story behind that that's how I got my start writing training tips. And the two things I assumed when I wrote that training tip is number one, if you have an SRM, you can afford to hire me as a coach. And number
Yeah.
two, power based training was the way I was going to differentiate myself because I didn't have any accolades. Was not famous. I wasn't well known. I hadn't really done anything in the sport. But I figured if I could teach people how to train with power and educate them about what power based training, how to leverage it, that could be my jam, and that could be what people hire me as a coach for. So I wrote that training tip, and yeah, lo and behold, a few folks reached out to me. And I was even using Google Analytics back then, and yeah, we got some website traffic. And
Uh-huh.
so I decided to write another training tip the next month and the next month, and I kind of got into this pattern where I realized one training tip a month equaled one athlete a month. And that was how it got started. It's funny how much content we make these days, because I thought one training tip a month was a lot. I was like, oh
Yeah.
dang man, I got to write
Uh,
this training tip again, and I'm all stressed out. And Now we put out a couple pieces of content a week, if not more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was way back then. Yeah.
Now you were still racing at
Hmm.
this time.
Yeah.
The current iteration of Frank is CEO of a company, founder of a company, father to three children. You'll come out to an event now and again, right? For
Yeah.
good fun, but
I love
that's
it. Yeah.
different than Frank Halcyon days of
Yeah.
still giving her. So early days, you have a story about being at Redlands,
Hmm.
the 5 day stage race that some of our current coaches were racing just this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How
So
did that go of trying to be bike racer guy and coach guy?
right. Racing definitely helped coaching be, and it helped give you street cred.
Mm.
Walking the walk, talking the talk.
Why should I listen to this guy? Like, oh, he was
Yeah,
just at Redlands.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't win. I got smoked, but that's another story. But going back to 2002, I was racing as a semi-professional mountain biker, and I'd worked really hard that year, training with Power and training full time. And so my plan was to do so well in the Northern National Mountain Bike Series to get my professional upgrade. And I went to Big Bear that year in May. I think I finished fifth in the semi-pro race, and I went to Alpine Valley, the next race in the series. And my plan was to get up on the podium again and upgrade right after that and race professionally all summer mountain bikes. That was a dream of mine. That was the end goal. And yeah, lo and behold, I got out there. I'm pre-riding the course. It's in the woods. It's dark. It's slick. It's rooty. And sure enough, I sent it, and I sent myself over the handlebars,
Nope.
and I reached out to put, to brace my fall, and my hand just happened to land right over a baby head size rock. And so my two, I think, metacarpals in the middle of my hand just folded in half. And
Uh,
I was wearing mountain bike gloves. I couldn't
uh,
really see it when I got up, but I knew I couldn't hold on to the handlebar. Knew I had done something, so I didn't take off my gloves, and I walked back out of the woods to the venue. And I also didn't have health insurance back then. So I had to hang out for 2 days, sucking down ibuprofen until I got back to Boulder. And they put my hand in a splint. Fortunately, it didn't need surgery. And the cool thing about a handbrake, they put it in this clamp that really just straightened out the bones,
uh-huh.
and it wasn't even a cast. And so my fingers were free and my thumb was free. So here I am, broken hand, ripping good form. And I rode a dumb trainer for 3 weeks, watched the Giro on ESPN doing VO2 max. Yeah, yeah. So I did a VO2 max block indoors, watching the Giro, and then the pain in my hand got to the point where it wasn't as great, and so I could ride outside, and I could ride one handed. I could take my hand, put it on my chest, and prevent the vibrations from the road coming up through the handlebar. And then a couple of weeks of that, and then I could get to the point where I could hang my thumb around the STI lever of my road bike, but I could not wrap my hand around the mountain bike handlebar because it's a different hole. So rip in good form, did this VO2 max block. I can hang my thumb around the road bike. What do? Well, I went to Super Week, where you automatically crash
Yeah.
every race.
They
And
don't call it stupid week for nothing. Yeah.
so when I crashed, I had to put my hand on my chest and naturally roll the other way and crash with the left hand out to brace the fall, not the broken hand. And so that's how Super Week went, and that was fun. And to tell you the truth, I became a roadie those 2 weeks. I was always had done well in road races and mountain biking. That sponsorship with that team I had that year kind of dried up, and the next year, I was like, I'm going to Redlands. I'm gonna do the Sea Otter. I'm gonna do all these NRC circuit races, and that's what I did. So I went out to Redlands that year, trained my tushy off that winter, tons of miles, and a lot of zone two. So we'll tell the story about that. So I go to Redlands. And I definitely remember talking with a prospective athlete like the day before the race in Redlands at Host Housing. I don't know if he went on to hire me. I don't think he did. But so do Redlands. Got
But before you went to Redlands, you had got another job lined up because even though some coaching clients were coming in,
Yeah,
you weren't yet the gajillionaire that you are
right.
today.
Yeah, so that 10 athlete at 10 athletes at $100 a month, that didn't materialize. I think I was at 2, maybe
Okay.
3.
Okay.
And so I had to take another biotech job. And when getting a biotech job was hard back then, really volatile. And there's not that many biotech. And Amgen had just moved their headquarters to Thousand Oaks from Boulder, and a lot of the startup ecosystem dried up. But I got a job, and when it came time to choose the start date, it was the Monday after Redlands, the day after the Sunset Loop. So I got dropped on the Sunset Loop and got in my car.
And Redlands is California, just for reference for folks.
Yeah,
Not anywhere
yeah.
near Boulder, Colorado.
We probably departed 3 p.m. Redlands, just drove. And my goal was just to get to work on time, 8 a.m., first day at work. And I made it, believe it or not, 7:30 a.m. But funny fact for everyone that's driven I-70 in the winter, so we're heading east, we're coming up over Floyd Hill. It had been raining. And as soon as we crested the hill, 60, 70 miles an hour, the rain turned to snow. And all of a sudden, there's like 6 inches of this deep slush snow on the road. And there's no one on the road. It's still like 6:15, 6:30 a.m. And naturally, in my car with like 4 bikes on it, we just slide across the road into
Yikes.
the ditch. And we didn't hit anything, thank goodness. And we just backed up and kept on going. And I drove right to the parking lot of the new job. I parked, I changed, and I went into work. And the guy that got a ride home from me with me, I
Uh-huh.
have no idea what he did. I think he probably had to call his people in Boulder, and they had to come down and get him. But yeah, so I started a new job. There we go. And um, yeah, so wasn't coaching, and I'm back to biotech, and that biotech job was it wasn't great. It was 8 to 5, and I would take long secret lunches at lunch, like 2 hour lunches, and go ride up and down Lookout Mountain. But I remember I bought a laptop computer. Uh, I had a desktop. I bought a laptop so I could take it to work with me. And while I'm in the lab waiting for the experiments to run, I would open up the laptop and I would design training plans and analyze power files and correspond with athletes. And everyone at work thought, "Oh, he's just a
That
hard
Frank is
worker."
such a hard worker. He's always just grinding it out over there.
Yeah, the funny thing is when I had to take phone calls, I had to step out, and this is like a warehouse biotech, so I'd step out into the back of this building and take calls in the back of the parking lot. And I can picture that parking lot in my head right now because it was kind of it wasn't the nicest place in the world. But
And
yeah,
at this
that's
point,
all.
you're still writing training columns,
Yeah.
and training columns are generating leads from
Yes.
athletes, prospective athletes.
Yeah.
So that's starting to build.
Hmm.
You're working full time. You're riding a lot.
Hmm.
You're coaching while you're working. You're coaching while after work,
Yeah.
and then life keeps expanding.
That's right. Yeah. If of course, I go from 2 athletes to 8, and then maybe 12, and now I have 2 full-time jobs. And I knew something had to give. And of course, coaching is way more fun than pipetting DNA, and I really wanted to be a coach. And so in the spring of 20 2004, I was like, all right, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit the biotech job, and I'm gonna coach full time. And I think I had
And you've got a baby on the way at this point to add a wrinkle to the
that's right.
story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my oldest daughter was due June of 2004, and I remember walking up to my boss like early May. I was like, I'm gonna quit, and I'm having a baby, and they were like, "You're crazy," and they didn't really know I was, had this other coaching gig, and that was up and coming. But ex-wife, now ex-wife, but wife at the time, she was very supportive and no worries at all. No, but it was amazing. Right after I quit, I went to work like the next week on Monday morning and I had all this time. I had all day to do coaching and it wasn't stressful anymore and it was super fun. And it really, believe it or not, it kind of, very conveniently really expanded from there. The training tips, kept writing those and more people hired me. And it wasn't before long I had plenty of athletes to coach to make ends meet. To really pay rent and it wasn't stressful anymore. So it was about a year and a half transition from biotech to full time coaching. I mean, but there was like a process along the way. I had the steps going. It was actually a relief when I left the biotech because I was probably working like 80 hours a week, and that was
It's too much.
all work and no play makes Frank a slow boy and not much bike riding. Yeah.
Yeah. 2004, another pivotal moment, USA Cycling Coaching Summit,
Hmm.
and a certain Dr. Andy Coggin, who
Yeah.
many know by name and maybe by chart and work, if not what the gentleman actually looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. USA Cycling back then had a really good coaches education program, and I leverage that to the full extent. And Sam Callan did a really wonderful job of developing that program, and he got really good speakers. And I'll never forget. I can picture where I'm sitting in one of the conference rooms to this day when I can't remember who it was. Maybe Barney King. He's another coach from Arizona. He got up and he explained zone based training in it, like zone 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And it was kind of like, aha, ding, ding, ding. And, but anyway, the USA Coaches Conference, 2004, big giant room. Andy stands up and it presents this performance model. He throws up like the most complicated slide I've ever seen. No one knew what he was talking about. It was very impressive.
uh,
We're like, we get it, Andy. You're really smart. But believe it or not, when they opened it up for Q&A, I asked him a question. He got back to me, and after the talk, I went up and talked to him. And maybe like 30 minutes later, a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet shows up in my inbox from Andy with instructions of how to use it. And so we that was the early performance manager chart. It was an Excel sheet, and what you did, you would go ride, you would download your power file into the Cycling Peaks software that became WKO software, and that would calculate a TSS from your ride, and then you just take that number and you type it into the spreadsheet and into the cells, and then that would calculate your CTL, ATL, and TSB. And shortly after I got that spreadsheet, turns out Andy was really building a team of other coaches and athletes and sports science to form a group to discuss the model and to validate it and to really put it through its paces over the next 5 to 6 months. And so we formed a group on Topica to ourselves. That was a different version of like a Yahoo groups. It was titled EWETSS, exponentially weighted TSS, and my nickname for the model was Tisk Wicket, TSTWKT, the shit that will kill them. And we've recorded a couple of podcasts about the origin of that and the meaning of that. But that's what I call the model because we saw this enormous amount of potential in the model to leverage our power data to quantify one's training load and then to figure out how much you need to train and then when you needed to rest and then the best ways to train the most to leverage the model, and that's how sweet spot training was born. And
which,
uh,
yeah, there's a whole lot there. Let's unpack a little bit of it.
yeah,
Yeah, for some folks who are just like overwhelmed by the alphabet soup coming out, TSS being training stress score.
uh-huh.
If you ride with a Garmin or Wahoo, you may notice like that's one of the fields in there under power that gives you a quantification of that ride's training load. And that's not a Wahoo thing. That's not a Garmin thing. That's just worked its way into our cycling training parlance. But that's
Yeah.
where that came from.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a piece of the puzzle of the performance manager chart, which, if you are a Training Peaks user, you're certainly familiar with. I would
Hmm.
suspect you're familiar with. If not, what that is a forest and a tree view of your training. So you do a ride and you get a TSS score, a training stress score. This is how much work you did. Like, you can just chop it up, quantify it by one number. That's what it is.
Hmm.
And that's the tree view. And the forest view is like all the rides you've done in the week and the month and the recovery from those. Because as we know, training is important, recovery as equally important. And so Dr. Coggin and Frank and other coaches were figuring out, okay, like, what is that balance of training and recovery over time, and how can you ramp it up? How should you best ramp it up? Yeah, a lot of thought went into figuring that out, and now it's just a feature that many people like myself just take for granted. Like, oh yeah, just look at my chart here, and I can see
Yeah.
how my training is coming along.
Hmm.
CTL, chronic training load, is how much I've been doing over time.
Yeah.
Acute is what I've been doing recently. If I rest after building up a big old load, then wham, my fitness comes up, and then I'm flying for Unbound or whatever my goal is. So
Hmm.
yeah, like anything, once it's built, it's pretty cool. Like, yeah, airplanes, they're cool things, but turned out somebody had to come up with all the engineering, how to make those things work. So
Hmm.
that's where those came from. And not only Training Peaks uses these features, but we've seen various iterations and distillations, like excuse me, like Strava's freshness and fitness, or fitness and freshness, I can't remember how they use it, is
Yeah.
like a very simplified version of that. And we see similar
Yeah.
things used elsewhere. But that was kind of the genesis of the whole kit and caboodle back to fall
Hmm.
of 2004.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Strava uses a version of TSS, Zwift uses a version of TSS. And really, it's the genius of what Andy created was not only TSS, but it's ATL and TSB. And, ATL is short for acute training load, and TSB, training stress balance, CTL, chronic training load. And so the way that we learned it, these terms, and understood it. So when you train, there's good stuff that happens and there's bad stuff that happens physiologically. So there's the
Emotionally too, yes.
emotionally. So when you train, there's what we call positive physiological adaptations. That's the stuff that makes you faster. And then there's negative physiological adaptations. That's the stuff that makes you slower. So let me give you an example. There's the good stuff, the increased mitochondrial density, aerobic endurance, all the pocket protector stuff. Now, the good news is those physiological adaptations, they have a half life of about 42 days. Now, the negative physiological adaptations like getting sore, muscular soreness, fatigue, even getting grumpy, that is the negative physiological adaptations when you train. The good news is the half life of those bad boys is like between 3 and 7 days. So if you look at the time constants in Training Peaks, you'll notice you can choose between 3 and 7 days. So what you do from your power data, you got your positive, you got your negative, and if you subtract the negative from the positive, that gives you your TSB, your training stress balance. And so when it comes time to go fast, then you rest and you subtract the negative from the positive, and that TSB is what we were really manipulating to understand what TSBs were indicative of really good power outputs, performances. And
Now, how did you account for differences in people? Because
Mhm.
how a Keegan Swinson responds to a 3-day block of 7, 8, 9 hour efforts, and how an old man Delaney would respond
Yeah.
are quite different. So how do you account for differences in physiologies and age and such?
Yeah, so few ways. There's an art and a science. The first way is these numbers are tailored to the individual athlete's threshold power. And so Keegan's going to have a higher threshold power. And so his numbers are going to be representative of him, his stress.
Yep.
And then his recovery, this is where the manager in the performance manager chart comes in. So he manages his training load, and at the time recovery was not really built in. We just assumed it.
Right.
And this goes to the time constants of acute training load. So old people like me and that are older, we have a higher time constant. It takes us longer to recover. Keegan, young, ripper, he's going to use a lower time constant, like a 3-day time constant. So he can recover much quicker. So when he chooses that lower time constant, and this is again, there was like 6 people in the world that knew about this.
Uh-huh.
But yet we
Uh,
were, really nerding out on this. So, like Keegan, someone in their 20s is going to use a lower time constant. Someone in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, much higher time constant. And so that's what tailors that to them. Of course, it lacked the other side of the equation. Fast forward to today, your recovery. And we can now quantify your recovery with your sleep and your HRV data. We can combine that with your power data like we were 20 years ago. And then lo and behold, now we have optimized the training and recovery balance. And so Keegan trains, he recovers, he can measure his balance, and we all can. And so what we are doing, we're tailoring, we're personalizing the data in that goes into the model for individuals, to answer your question.
mhm. Sweet Spot also came out of that initial tinkering of the 6 super nerds
Yeah.
hunkered around the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it sure did. And speaking of the super nerds, I should shout out to there was Andy Coggin, there was John Verheul, there was Dave Harris, who is an optimized user. When we released Optimized, I saw him come in and we shot a few emails. Brian Walton was in there. There's others that I forget. I apologize if you're listening. I've lost touch with them over the years. I sent those guys like Christmas cards. That's how much we talk back then. I
Yeah.
mean, like every day for 6 months, thereabouts, to really, nerd out, zone in on the model, validate it, understand the data. And what I was doing with regards to sweet spot training is, so we knew TSS drove the training load higher. And so one of the goals we knew was to, training load, CTL measures not only not is like how much training have you been doing lately over
Yes.
time. And
Yes.
that's the grand value of CTL and training load. So TSS is what you do per day, and that goes into calculating CTL, which is how much training you've done over time. So the goal was to accumulate a lot of training, have a high training load. So the way I was going about doing it was, you know, this was 2004. So I have a kid now. I watch the kid, the baby, my daughter, during the day while my wife worked. And when my wife came home, she was a teacher at 3:30 in the afternoon. That was my window. Hand off the kid to the wife, and I had these what were called Gatorade slushy rides. So from 3:30 till the time it got dark. This is before smart trainers in Zwift. I had the opportunity to go out and ride. So it's usually like somewhere between like 60 and 90 minutes, and then it got a little bit longer as the spring came along. So I didn't have time for intervals. I just rode hard for the whole time. And it was all cold. And so your drink mix would turn to slush by the time you were coming back, and you'd come back at dark 30. And the way I was doing it, get a large TSS, really just ride as hard as you can, but not too hard, so that you can't do it again tomorrow. But generate a large TSS. So that wound up being high tempo, low threshold. So we were coming back, we'd analyze the data, we'd use normalized power, which is a fancy way of average power of what the body truly does. And so it was coming in sub threshold, about 84 to 97%. And so Andy one day, we're on the topic group, and we're describing how I was generating these large TSSs day after day after day to drive up the training load. And he comes back with this multicolored graph with training zones on the x-axis and intensity on the y-axis with arbitrary units. And he drew the modern day sweet spot graph with sweet spot occurring right in between, like what it is, 84 to 97% sub threshold. And if you went harder than that, that's when you would incur so much physiological stress that you would need to recover more. And then you wouldn't be able to repeat it and it wouldn't be sustainable. And if you train less hard than that, then you wouldn't achieve as much physiological adaptations that you possibly could in one or two workouts. And so we dubbed that spot, the graph, the sweet spot. And I kept sweet spotting and kept sweet spotting some more and used sweet spot training to really build a really big base that year, the winter of 0405. And my goal was the Colorado State Time Trial Championships. And the previous year, with not that much training, I had placed like fourth or fifth or something, good enough to be like, well, if I just apply myself, I could maybe win. And so that was my goal that year. I'm using sweet spot training. I was racing Cherry Creek on Wednesday nights and then racing all the local time trials on the weekends. And I used the performance chart not only to drive my training load up high, but to manage my training and know when to start resting. And
Hmm.
so I designed a 2-week taper into my training plan. And about 2 weeks before the Colorado State Time Trial Championship, I started resting. And you read about what a taper is on paper, and we just podcasted about that 4 or 6 weeks ago. But then when you see your training load starting to decrease, and you're sitting at home on the couch thinking, this is counterproductive. This is counterintuitive. I'm
Right.
supposed to be out training,
All
but
that
you're
work I did, I'm just letting it go. I'm just letting it all go now.
yeah, but meanwhile, in the model, the TSB is starting to get higher and higher and higher. And the week before, I did a workout and I was like smashing watts, like really good threshold numbers. And I get to the Colorado State time trial. It's really hot, extremely hot. And I've got, the Troxel helmet on, the tri-spoke front wheel and the disc and the power meter. And I was like, you know, I was like, I don't want to go out too hard. And all spring, I had been time trialing at Cherry Creek about 320, 330 for about 20, 22 minutes. And got out to Cherry Creek. I'm sorry, the state time trial, really hot, windy day. And I'm seeing like 380, 370, 390. And I was like, holy shit, my power meter's broken.
Hmm.
And after about 2 or 3 minutes of that, I was like, no, I feel really good. And and and
Uh-huh.
then I'm like, well, don't go too hard. Don't blow up. And then, like 5, 10 more minutes go by and I'm like, this is real. And I kind of just settled into it and I felt amazing. And so when you hear about what peaking is and just I mean, there's like suffering when you don't feel good, but then there's like suffering and you're just belting it out. And that's what this was. And um I was able to hold like, between 340 and 360, a little bit of 370, the whole 50 sub 50-minute time trial, crossed the finish line, uh, you know, averaged close to 30 miles an hour. And yeah, it was an amazing performance. 350 watts normalized, which is really good for me. That was it was about 5.1, 5.2 watts per kilogram.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And
That's huge.
yeah, it was, I
Who was
mean, it
there
was
with you on the podium that day?
Scott Moniger. Yep, he won.
Oh, just the man who has won more races in America than anyone else,
That
literally.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's actually he's a coach now, and I was doing a ride with him. I hope he's listening. I was doing a ride with him maybe a couple years ago, and he's heard the story of Sweet Spot and Performance Manager Chart. He wasn't training with power then, and so he asked me. He's like, what power did he do that day?" Because he was trying to figure out what power he did because he finished I think it was like 20 23 seconds ahead of me. And yeah, so that was a good story. So back in the office on Monday, naturally back in the topic group, we were like, I shared my power file and the performance manager chart. We had to share the performance manager chart in an Excel sheet. And so we would share the file with everyone as an attachment. And they were all looking at it. And, then you see the power and you see the TSB and you're like, by golly, we just validated the model. And this is how you use it. And about a month later, I wrote the first Sweet Spot article, 2005, late June, maybe July. I was at Super Week again, back at it. And I remember being in a hotel room and the editor keeps sending me back edits. And I'm like, I got grumpy. You probably know this because you're an editor and you're a writer. And I was like, no, just write it this way. I need to go to bed. I'm racing tomorrow. And kept sending me back edits. And, like, because the thing about it is, the reason why I kept getting it bounced back to me with these edits is because no one had talked about sweet spot training before. And so the editors, when they got it, they were like, WTF. And, I'm
Yeah.
trying to explain the past 6 months of work to them. And it was really difficult in the format because it was, I think, training tips back then were supposed to be 1,000 words or less for this website. And yeah, and I wasn't that good of a writer back then, to tell you the truth. Not, I've become a much better writer over the years and gotten way better at kind of explaining things in written form and podcast form. But back then, I was a little rough around the edges, and I just remember having to do a bunch of edits the night before. Some super
Dang
week.
editors.
Yeah,
Yeah, but like you said, there were 6 of you working on this who had been talking about it every single day for months and months and months. And so
yeah,
it's hard to keep track at that point of like what your assumptions are, what the
hmm,
shared assumptions are.
yeah,
Because the 6 of you have been talking, TSBs, but you're speaking Greek and you're all speaking
100%.
Greek, so you understand each other. Then you go outside of Greece and people are like, I literally don't know what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So yeah, I mean that was the story, and yeah, it was a really exciting time to be a bike racer, self coached, and I think in learning about power based training, but also pushing the field forward with this new way of thinking about power based training, and that's so the performance manager chart went into what became WKO. So there was WKO 3 back then. Then they released WKO 4 and WKO 5, and then WKO 5 is the modern day version today. But somewhere along the way, I can't remember the exact details, but WKO got bought by Training Peaks. And one of the things that we were hoping, which actually did come, was the incorporation of the whole performance manager chart into the Training Peaks platform. And we'll get to that part in about 10 years from where we are now.
uh,
But the way that Training Peaks brought that chart in there was really what got us over the hump of beginning to use Training Peaks like we do today.
another big hump to get over for FasCat was your work with professional teams and then the U.S. national team. So '06
Mm-hmm.
was the start of you coaching Priority Health
Yeah,
with
yeah,
some names that may be familiar to FasCats. A
yeah.
certain gentleman by the name of Jake Berleski.
Coach
Brent,
Jerry.
yeah, Brent Bookwalter,
Mm-hmm.
guy named Ted King,
Yeah,
Brian Sheedy, a man named Tom Zerbel,
Sir Beast.
wee little Tom.
Yeah, yeah. So,
How did that come to be, and how did that shape the work you
mhm.
were doing?
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Zerbel. So I think late '04, 2005, at some point, Tom hired me to be his coach. And Tom, this is a great story. Tom was a NCAA elite level cross country runner, 10K. I'm not really sure, steeplechase, really good runner. And he was introduced to me by a friend. His name is Ian Stanford. Ian, I had coached Ian. Ian actually went on to work for Head Cycling, became an aerodynamic guru in time trials. He actually came to the FasCat Performance Center to present one time. But anyway, so Ian introduced me to Tom. Tom came to me as a Cat 4 and big old guy, no racing experience, and I'm I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, but I was the one that told him he didn't need to wear underwear underneath. Yeah.
FasCat coaching for all your coaching needs,
Yeah.
top to bottom, literally.
That was the first thing we tackled. But anyway, right away. I mean, so I got Tom on a power meter, and Tom was delivering pizzas back then, and it's such a cool story. I mean, he was really living a very monastic, poor life, delivering pizzas and riding all day, but training with power. And right away, I mean, we'd give him like tempo intervals, and they'd be like 400 watts, and we were like, dude,
Yeah.
you got to start time trialing.
Yeah. I remember
You
that.
know,
And it
and
seems
then we
like whatever you give and he'd just eat it up and be like, okay, what's next? And you'd be like,
right,
another
yeah,
hour of that. And be like, and
yeah, no problem.
yeah.
But he could do north of 400 watts when he was actually going hard, and we saw that right away. And so in 2005, yeah, the Elite National Championships were in Park City, Utah, and back then, if you won that, it was like guaranteed pro contract. And so, I'm coaching Tom, and we're having our weekly call, and it's getting like to May, and I'm like, "Are you going to the national time trial or what?" And he kept on hemming and hawing, and I said, "Shut up, dude. Get in my car. We're going." And so I got him to because he was he didn't have the means and all that, and he
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you, he was on a borrowed time trial bike, and he put together like clip on bars and borrowed a disc and like borrowed a he couldn't borrow a skin suit because no one would fit him, but he got like booties so we drive out to Park City, Antelope Island, and we do this time trial, and Tom gets fourth in the pros, and he's a cat 3, 4, and so we go back to Deer Valley where the presentation was, and the next day was the road race. Now back then the rule book said you had to be a cat 2 or higher in order to do the road race, and when he's getting his medal, the president of USA Cycling, I said, "Hey Tom, now would be a great time to ask for your cat 2 upgrade." So he gets the
uh,
medal and he asks for the upgrade. And the guy's like, "Yeah, email me Monday." And we're like, "No, we really need that now." Road race. And so he did not get to do the road race, but instead we put him, I'm not kidding, on a train to Oregon. And there was a stage race out in Oregon that cat twos only. Back then, cat twos road racing was popular enough where cat twos there was a few stage races like the Gila in this race in Oregon, Sea Otter, a couple one days. That cat twos got their own race, and it was like where you would go to perform to get your cat one upgrade. Long story short, Tom goes out there.
Is this Mount Hood or something, or what is this?
I
He's
can't even
doing.
remember. It's
Yeah.
like the Mount Hood stage race. He goes does the Cat 2 field. He wins the time trial on the first day. He's got no team. There's all these like Cat 2 teams out there, and they gang up on him. And you know what he does? He just like rides defense for the next 3 stages, chases down everything,
Solo.
holds his GC lead and wins, gets his Cat 1 upgrade. And the story of that is he had to take a train back to Boulder, and but back then directors would look at the results of nationals, especially TT, and when they saw this no name Tom Zerbel and they looked him up, there, he got a couple offers, and he got the best offer was from Priority Health. Brian Sheedy was the director and the guy that gave him his first shot, and so I was coaching Tom, and Tom goes to Priority Health, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to coach that team with Tom, and that's how I met him. And power based training was most pros were fairly skeptical of power based training back then. The believe it or not, it was us amateurs that adopted power based training first, and the amateur coaches, and then
Yeah, I mean that was interesting what you were saying about Moniger
mhm,
just flying blind and flying blind quite successfully because he's so talented and works so hard.
yeah,
But yeah, that's a perfect example right there. Like that guy was the best in the U.S. for years and years,
mhm,
clueless about power, like literally clueless about
clueless.
power
He didn't need it.
as
He
far as
just wrote.
using.
He was old school.
Yeah,
But so we get so Priority Health 2006, and I kind of talked to Sheedy, and I was like, hey, let me coach y'all, and completely free. And so I wound up coaching. That's how I met Coach Jake. That's how I bought Ted King his first power meter. We podcasted about that. It was a box with zip ties and stickers and wires, and he had to build up the hub. It was a power tap hub. He had to build up the wheel. I'll never forget him sitting on the and it was sitting on the bed of a hotel, and like, here you go, here's your power meter, good luck. But yeah, power files started showing up about 10 days later. But I met Ted King, Brent Bookwalter was on the team that year. It was a great team, and we did a lot of good races. And yeah, I did well enough with the team that year that USA Cycling gave me a ring and asked me if I wanted to direct the U.S. national women's team in 2007. And when I heard the job description, it was like, yeah, no question, done. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yes,
that was over to Europe to race all the World Cups being based in Belgium part-time and Italy part-time.
yeah, yeah. The national team house in Izehim, Belgium, and then USA Cycling had just formed a service course in Lucca with SRM at the SRM Villa, and we did all the World Cups. We started with Flanders in March, and we finished with Ardèche and Worlds in September. And the way to describe that job is: here's a credit card, here's the emails of the riders. We want you to do these races. Good luck.
Wow.
And so that, that's how you do it. I invite so in Europe, you have to email the promoters and you have to get an invitation. Hey, we would like to do this race, and they send you your invitation. You send them back the riders, and you book airline tickets, and you plan the trip and logistics. And it was a lot of driving. You're basically a logistics expert. But the best part of it, is driving in the caravan, talking to the riders in the radio. That was the best part of the whole thing, and just really being immersed in all the World Cup cycling, and seeing top level talent. We
Yeah, I mean, it was like all-stars on that squad that year. Kristen Armstrong,
Yeah,
Olympic gold medalist, Mara Abbott, Amber Nabin, et
yeah,
cetera, et cetera.
all the hitters. It was the best women in the United States, all preparing for the Beijing Olympics, preparing to develop into the World Tour racers. And we raced against Mariana Voss, the best European racers. Mariana Voss was like a teenager back then. She
Hmm.
won everything. It was
Hmm.
amazing. She was winning everything back then. And yeah, it was great, great, amazing experience.
Come back to Boulder,
Mhm.
2018. Power meter's still on the rise. Now you're not just talking about them, experimenting with them. You're starting to sell the things.
Yeah. Yeah. 2008. I remember my good friend Chad Everett, Chad Harris from New Orleans, an athlete I coached. He ran a successful like landscaping business, and they sold a lot of landscaping, houseware. Imagine like a McGuckins or a Home Depot online. And
Okay.
he was telling me all about it. And we were such nerds back then. We were talking about Garmin and Wahoo and SRM and Quark, and I had gotten him all these power meters. He was like, "You should sell these online." And so I tried, and I remember going to like a web person, and they were like, "The reason why you're not selling these things is your website sucks." And like, okay, well, let's fix the website. And
Yeah.
we started selling power meters all over the world, because we would write training tip content about training with power, and people would come and find us. And back then, power meters were not in bike shops. They weren't mainstream, and they were difficult to find, and no one knew anything about them. And so when we would sell a power meter, it generally came after a 30 or 45-minute consultation of how, like, what's the best one for your bike, what's the most accurate way. Do I want a hub, do I want a crank, and if I get a crank, will it work with this drivetrain, this bottom bracket, which computer, and so forth. So we became really good at that, and we sold a lot of power meters. And we continued that into 2009, and we were starting to sell so many power meters. We got a website that was better, and I was like, we should open up a shop. We should open up a performance center. And so the performance center that we opened in 2010 was an amalgamation of four things. So a physiology lab, a bike fit lab, a power meter retail center, and then of course indoor cycling. Indoor cycling was just starting to take off around that time, and so we had all four under one roof, 1,500 square foot. I qualified for a SBA loan from United States government, part of Obama's stimulus package. Because in 2008, you remember there was that whole economic crisis, and there was the stimulus package, and so SBA loans were really good and easy to get back then. They weren't easy to get, but they were like really favorable loan terms. And so
Hmm.
I bought a building and I built it out, and bought all the, I had enough money to buy working capital, to buy the best of the best: Parvo, YSI, exercise physiology stuff, Dartfish, 3D motion capture. I had enough money to buy all the indoor trainers. Remember the power beams
Yeah.
from Ceres,
Yeah.
and of course power meter inventory. And yeah, that was we opened up in June of 2010 with a training camp, and of course it rained, and so we could do the testing, and we couldn't do much training riding. But yeah, we did that for the next 5 years.
Yeah, right there on Broadway. It was, yeah, prime real estate. That was fancy business, and athletes from newbies to like world tour racers could go in, do their training,
Hmm.
do their physiological testing there with the metabolic cart, like
Yeah.
full on science experiments going on.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Um,
awesome. Greg Henderson was one of our first pro athlete clients, and Greg told all of his world tour racing buddies, and we became the place in Boulder where world tour athletes would come for testing. They do supplemental oxygen training, and then we had motor pacing. We
yeah,
went
I
from
was going to
two
bring, yeah.
mopeds, two scooters, total of about 40,000 miles, all motor pacing, and yeah, I mean, we sat on the back of we drove a lot of World Tour riders: TJ, Van Garderen, Timmy Dugan, God, Rory Sutherland, of course, Greg. I mean, when US Pro Cycling, the race would come through town, we were always booked up with motor pacing.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. 40,000 miles is a lot of miles sitting there in the wind.
Yeah, fortunately, I had a few coaches that I taught how to motor pace. Everyone that became a coach at FasCat had to learn how to motor pace, and it was a whole thing. There was like training. It wasn't simple. There's an art to having a really good throttle hand to adjust it just right.
Right. You want to be whiplashing riders around.
We would give riders a heart rate monitor, and then we would have the computer on the handlebar of the scooter, and so we could tell when we were driving them too hard or too easy from their heart rate monitor. We tried it with power, and it kind of sort of worked, but power would bounce all over the place, and it was gobbledygook when you looked at it in real time. And so heart rate was actually a great way to motor pace
Uh huh.
athlete, because it was more steady.
Uh
It
huh.
gave me more of a picture of what's going on with them right then.
A few other things happened during that time. You're selling SRM, super high zoot. Quark was more reasonable,
Mhm.
but still not a cheap thing. And then Stages, the
Yeah.
Boulder based company, they launched what, like at Interbike in 2011, but actually like selling in 2012.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Pat and Doug came over to FastCat, and it was so cool because not only did they have this new power meter, but it was cheaper, easier to install, and they were in Boulder.
Right.
And so we were on board from the get go, and our athletes just absolutely loved them, because you went from a $3,000 SRM power meter to a $500 Durace or Ultegra Stages power meter. And now only, now it opened up power based training to so many more athletes because it was way more affordable and it was
Yeah.
easier to install on the bike. And we quickly became the number two North American Stages dealer for 2 years in a row. We sold the heck out of those things. And I forgot to mention, so back then we had this promo. So when you bought a power meter from us, we'd give you a free month of coaching. And so our thinking was, we don't just sell you the power meter, we teach you how to use it. And we'll give you the free month of coaching while that's in order to help you learn. And obviously our goal was to convert some of those athletes into coaching athletes, and a lot did, and they became coaching clients of us. So we sold them a power meter, and we got an athlete to coach, and we got really good at that. And so we sold a lot of Stages power meters. It was a really exciting time. And people would come in, they'd talk with us about training with power. And because it was no longer a $3,000 or $2,000 quart purchase, they would get into it and they would enlist our help uh, trying to figure out how to make sense of it all.
Now, I want to leave the fall of the Performance Center for next episode
Mm-hmm.
of the mitigating factors that led to that,
Yeah.
aka Swift. But build us up to the peak
Yeah.
of the center. I remember coming in for weeknight classes
Mm-hmm.
in the winter. That was something to look forward to,
Mm-hmm.
of getting together with like-minded folks and fogging up
Yeah.
the glass windows there, and you'd queue up videos on
Uh-huh.
screen, and you'd walk the class through
Yeah.
the different interval sections. There,
Mm-hmm.
there was a bit of fiddling to be done. Of like,
Yeah.
Sumner's got a Campy 9-speed, Delaney's got Shimano, this kid's got a
Uh-huh.
SRAM. You had
Yeah.
like cassettes galore, and
Yeah.
it was not quite as plug and play as hopping on a smart
The
bike now.
the technology that we employed was not smooth, but we worked hard at it because we were determined to use power based technology in our classes. And we designed a 10-week power based curriculum. It started off with a power based test and then tempo workouts, sweet spot workouts. And we downloaded everyone's power files and we analyzed it for them. And at the end of the 10 weeks, we'd have them do another test so they could measure their improvement. But year number one, we bought a fleet of power beams from Saris Cycling, and those things just did not work. Um, they
It works
were
sometimes.
sometimes, and then what we learned, because about 2 weeks in, when everyone was getting these power dropouts from, because it was Bluetooth. This is like when wireless was like a thing because it was
Yeah,
brand new.
yeah.
And I was determined not to use CompuTrainers because the wires were everywhere and they were hideous looking, and you had to build like these platforms. And I was like, let's just go wireless. Let's do the power beams. Let's push the envelope. But what would happen? People would get power dropouts. And I got Chris Fortune, the CEO of Ceres. I ran my complaint so far up the chain that he flew out here with a team of engineers and set up all these sensors in the center, and wanted to see what was going on. He was promising me, "Oh, we'll fix this, we'll make it right," and all this. And what it came down to was when Subway, who we shared a wall with, would microwave a sandwich, the microwaves would interfere with the Bluetooth and
Bing.
power dropouts. No way to prevent that. I went over there to the Subway and asked if I could give him like a sheet of aluminum to put behind his microwave, and he said no. So the classes that were held in the morning when Subway wasn't open,
We're
no
golden.
power dropouts.
Yep. Mm.
The classes held at lunch and right after work, a lot of power dropouts. But we persevered. I ditched power beams after year one. I bought a 30 power tap wheels. And so when you came in, we would take your rear wheel out. We would swap a power tap wheel in. We had and like cassettes upon cassettes, all the different, like when 10 speed, or maybe it was even 9 speed back then, when they came out, that threw a wrench into our whole process. And but we had Campy 6 speed. I remember one lady came in with like someone came in with like Campy 7 speed. That's like anyway, I mean, we got really good at that, and we could change cassettes really quick, and we'd put your power tap wheel in, and we were leading all these classes power based, so zone based. So they weren't like your typical spin class, like stand up, spin faster. I mean, they
Right.
were we were going by science, and it was zone based, and we did really well with those, and we did power taps for 2 years, 11 and 12, and then the kicker came out, and I was like, that looks pretty awesome. And so I bought 2 pallets of kickers. And when I say pallets, I'm saying 20 kickers per pallet, and delivered on a forklift. And so we sold one pallet and we used the other pallet for classes, and people loved them. And so we did all sorts of cool things, power based training. We were using Sufferfest videos. Remember those?
Oh yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
CDs or downloads or something. And we did like we also would go out and ride Flagstaff with a Verb camera, download the GPS file, and then you could match the power demands of riding Flagstaff climb to a video on the class. And we were coaching everyone how to do it by power and downloading their files for them. We would send them to Training Peaks and give everyone a Training Peaks account so that they could go in and look at their power after the class. And yeah, so we rocked that for 2013 and 14. And around 2014, that's when Zwift came along. And it was super cool. And now that palette of kickers that I had sold to like people that really love these things, now they could do those classes at home. And that I saw the writing on the wall. And that was one contributing factor to like like when we were getting ready for the 2015 indoor cycling season. It was like, wow, we're now, why would you want to put your bike on the roof in the dead of winter in the cold and then take it off your roof, bring it inside, put it on a trainer, hook it up, be beholden to a certain time and a schedule and all that. So that was, one of the contributing factors when we talk about the rise and the fall of the performance center.
Yeah, well, let's talk about. We'll leave it there for now. We'll talk about the next phases in the next podcast. But I will answer your question. Like, why would you want to do that in the dead of winter? What I enjoyed about that was that it was a precursor to Zwift, and that you were getting the motivation of a group setting
Yeah.
because there was like some friends and other people there, and
Yeah.
there was a knowledgeable coach at the front of the class, and you were getting the power based training. And it was a lot of things that you literally could not get by yourself or doing any trying to put that together elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah. Yeah.
a place and a time like you had put together something, the science side, the technology side, the group dynamic piece, like that nobody else was doing. So that was a cool thing.
It was a hoot. Yeah. It was super fun.
More cool things, more innovations, more head scratching. I don't think there's any more microwave stories, but we've got some more. Yeah, more curveballs
Stages.
in part 2.
We have the stages. We'll include that in the part 2 as well. There's a great story behind that.
All right, all
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
Frank. This has been a fun one. I've enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. We went a little long. Thank you for listening. If you still are listening.
Yeah, if you're still listening, be sure, if you're not already an optimized user, get on the boat, people.
Yeah.
The code 25 podcast will save you 25% off your subscription. You can get unlimited access to all of our training plans, workouts, meal plans, recipes, and access to all of our coaches, including the big cat himself.
That's right.
But for now, we're going to leave you here and remind you to
work hard, ride fast, have fun, and as always, FTFP.